Good evening. The hybrid meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the County of Brant is about to begin, and I will ask staff to start the recording. Good evening, members of the committee, applicants, agents, staff, and members of the public. And before I go any further, I will note that item 6.4 for application B19-23HH for applicant Lagori on 94 Dundas Street West in Paris has now been removed from the agenda and will take place at some future date. As this meeting is also being held virtually, I will remind you that meeting is being recorded and streamed live via the County of Brant YouTube account. There are no Committee of Adjustment members attending online. Planning staff will be requested to join the meeting during presentations and will be available to answer questions. There are some applicants, agents, and owners in delegations who are also participating virtually. All persons wishing to speak to the items on the agenda were required to register prior to the meeting. Any comments, questions, or concerns received in written format have been provided to the members of the committee and will form part of the meeting record. Applicants, agents, and members of the public, if you are online, please ensure your camera is off, your microphone is on mute throughout the meeting, and your name is correct on the screen. When called upon to speak, please remember to unmute your microphone and turn your camera on before speaking. Those presenting as delegations will have 10 minutes to speak to the application at hand, not past applications or associated applications. And I believe there are 2 delegations tonight. In the event since there are no members of the committee online, we don't have to worry about quorum given the storm. And if you are present in council chambers this evening and wish to speak to an item on the agenda, please state your name and come to the podium and speak into the microphone. This meeting is held in accordance with the provision of the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss minor variance and consent applications and give anyone in attendance the opportunity to ask questions, provide comments related to an application. Notice of this meeting was provided by mail and sign posted on those sites by staff as required by the Planning Act. A copy of the meeting agenda, including the staff report, related materials, and comments received are available on the County of Brant website. Once the presentations, public hearing, and question period are complete for each item, if the committee deems it appropriate, a decision will be made. Each committee decision is final following the 20-day appeal period. Please note there is a sign-in sheet at the back of the room here by the entrance. If you are attending in person and wish to be notified of any decision on these items on the agenda, kindly note your name and address with regards to that specific application on the sign-in sheet. If you do not request a copy on that sheet, you will not be notified. The names of those individuals who wish to speak on any item tonight will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing to receive further notice or a copy of the committee's decision, please contact the County of Brant Planning Department. The order of delegation are as follows: the planning staff report and recommendation, applicant agent presentation, questions and discussion, public comments, further questions of clarification, and decision. I'll now take attendance. Please indicate you are present by stating present if you are here. Mary Jane Brown, present. Harry Emmett.
Present.
Steve Schmidt.
Present.
Bob Hamilton.
Present.
Jane Peneg.
Present.
Rebecca Smith. Present. And I will note that John Vamus is not in attendance tonight. We will move to item 2 on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Do any members have items to be added to the agenda for tonight? And may I request a mover and seconder? Member Schmidt and Member Emmett. Can you please state your motion?
Moved by myself and seconded by Member Emmett that the agenda for the County of Brant Committee of Adjustment meeting of July 20th, 2023 be approved.
Thank you. Members, please indicate if you are in favor of this motion, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Panag?
Yes.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Brown, yes. The motion has carried. The agenda for tonight has been approved. We'll now move to item 3, declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any members who would like to declare a conflict of interest on any of the items this evening? It appears there are none. So we will now move to item 4, the adoption of minutes from the previous meeting, which was June 15th, 2023. Do the committee members have any errors or omissions to note on those minutes? I believe there are now. May I request a mover? Member Hamilton and a seconder. Member Schmidt, can I please have a motion, Member Hamilton?
Moved by myself, second by Member Schmidt, that the minutes of the County of Brant Committee of Adjustment meeting on June the 15th, 2023 be approved.
Thank you, Member Hamilton. So members, please state if you are in favor of this motion, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Member Schmidt?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member Panag?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion has carried. The minutes from the meeting of June 15th, 2022 for the Committee of Adjustment has been approved. I'll now move to item 6.1 for application B14 20-23-ES and turn it over to staff for the presentation of the report and the recommendation.
Good evening. This is consent application B14-23-ES to sever a surplus farm dwelling for the lands located at 217 Highway 2 from the Angrish Group on behalf of owners Samuel and Miles Pinenberg in the geographic township of Burford. The subject lands are located north of 2nd Concession Road, east of Middletown Line Road, and south of Highway 2. The subject lands contain an existing single detached dwelling that is currently vacant, and the subject lands are rectangular in shape with a lot area of 48.96 acres and frontage of approximately 232 meters. The surrounding area consists of agricultural land uses and low-density residential uses. The proposed severed lands containing the dwelling are neighboring an existing residential lot, and the subject lands are privately serviced by well and septic. The applicants are requesting to sever the existing dwelling and barn from the rest of the agricultural lands, which were recently purchased as part of a larger farm operation in Brant and Oxford counties. Staff have verified that the owners do have a farm operation based on zoning bylaw definitions, and that the lands are surplus because of farm consolidation. The severed parcel will be 0.5 hectares with frontage of 42 meters on Highway number 2, which meets current zone regulations for surplus farm dwelling severances. The retained lands will be approximately 19.3 hectares with a frontage of 190 meters. The subject lands are designated as agriculture in the County of Brant official plan. Subject lands are zoned agriculture within the current County of Brant zoning bylaw. If approved, a condition of the severance would be that the remaining retained lands would be rezoned to A9 to prohibit the future construction of a dwelling in accordance with provincial and municipal policies, as well as that the storage barn be decommissioned and other agricultural buildings on the land be demolished. So no public comments were received as part of the public circulation. I am recommending approval of the consent subject to conditions for the reasons outlined in my report. Therefore, it is my professional recommendation that consent application B14-23-ES be approved subject to attached conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for the presentation. Does the committee have any questions or comments to staff on this application? Member Hamilton, please go ahead.
Through the chair to staff, condition number 5, I'm just looking for clarification. You said the existing structures are to remain and be decommissioned, and that a change of permit use be obtained. What is a change of permit use?
Through the chair, a change of use permit is a permit issued by the building department to change the specific use of a building. So for instance, this building would have been issued for agricultural purposes, and so to help recognize that, or to for residential purposes, considering it would be a residential lot. Agricultural Advisory Committee did have concerns about the possibility of using the structure on site for livestock in the future, and wanted to see that be limited. So decommissioning it as well as a change of use permit would be the avenue to pursue that.
Okay, thank you. Maybe as a second question, I'll put this maybe to Dan. Have we ever had this in a thing before, a change of use permit? It seems new to me, so I'm just asking, that's all.
Through Madam Chair, the condition has been included before where we have had livestock operations or livestock barns decommissioned so that they cannot house livestock moving forward. And the idea of a change of use permit is just another way that staff are trying to recognize these existing buildings that are still in good shape, that are going to be used for different purposes moving forward. So it does allow for these previously used agricultural buildings to stay in place and maintain the agricultural landscape. And it will also allow for our building division to take a look to make sure that they are secure and that they are moving forward with a standard that continues to meet the building code moving forward for non-agricultural uses.
So this is new to us, I guess. I don't remember it being used in the last 10 years. So
yeah, I think this was a suggestion that came out of some discussions with the applicant and our building division.
Okay.
So we'll try to incorporate it here.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Member Emmett?
Just a question through you to staff. The requirement to have a fire payment made regarding rural firefighting. We're not creating a new building, so I didn't know why we have to charge for a fire and parkland, that kind of thing, since we're not creating another building lot.
Through the chair, my understanding is that because we are technically creating a residential lot on that property separate from the agricultural parcel, that the fee should be collected, but I'm going to look to Dan for further clarification.
Through Madam Chair, same just to build on that response with the park, in terms of the parkland dedication, we recently passed a parkland dedication bylaw in early 2022, which did speak specifically to the surplus dwelling. So we're now applying it to the severance of a surplus dwelling.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Member Hamilton?
Through the chair to staff, is this been changed, zoned, not agriculture, but has there been a zoning change to this piece of land?
Through the chair, no, there has not. The current lands in its entirety currently are zoned agricultural. Of course, the newly severed lot would then acquire existing lot of record, and then the retained lands are to be rezoned A9 to recognize those deficiencies there.
Yeah, I guess that's no problem, but it's not a building lot. It's not a resident. It's not zoned residential. It's agricultural still from a zoning perspective. Am I correct? That's why I'm wondering about I agree with Member Emmett here of why we're doing that and asking for park, also for park, paying for park, stuff like that when we never have in the past.
Any further comments then? Member Smith.
Sorry, I'm going to add to it a little bit. So I think just to Member Hamilton's point, specifically speaking about the change of use of the barn, because the property is still zoned agricultural, and I know in terms of the building code, zoning is an applicable law as well. So I'm just wondering going forward if these lots now need to be zoned for residential use, so we can make sure that the former agricultural building specifically is a residential building with that change of use. Especially if we're going to be asking for these other things as well. Sorry, I know it's hard to hear me, but just to know going forward, maybe for staff to take that into consideration.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I had a comment, the second bullet under the reasons for approval specifically refers to the A9 zoning. Yet in the conditions, 7A, it doesn't specifically refer to A9 zone. It just gives it to prohibit a dwelling. I think in the past when conditions were drafted, we specifically included A9. Could I possibly suggest that the A9 zone be referred to explicitly in that second bullet? Or in 7A condition. Because none of the other conditions refer to the zoning. So I'd make that as a suggestion if that's okay.
To the chair, that's possible.
Okay. Then are there any other comments to staff on this? And is the applicant or their agent present and wish to add to any of the staff report? Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lucia Andrews from Agriculture. I'm here to answer any questions. Thanks, Emily, for the presentation. Just a couple of comments that I heard from the committee members. I just wanted to provide some clarification. The existing barn on the property has never been used for livestock. It is currently being used as a storage barn. We provided evidence as part of our application as well. We're fine with going through a change of use permit to make sure that it continues to be used for storage, knowing that livestock operations have different set of rules. There are less setbacks, there are many other rules that need to conform to if in case in the future owner wishes to convert that barn into livestock regardless. But for to satisfy the condition, we're okay with that. In terms of permanent dedication and firefighting fees, I think we did raise that concern with Emily as well, and mimic some of the comments from the committee members that these are very aggressive fees to do a surplus compounding. The owners are here, and the only intent is to continue to harm. The house is surplus to their needs. They just don't want to maintain the home, and these fees are very aggressive. So it's not creating a new house, and the house has been existing there for decades. It's not creating a new residential lot. That's not what the intent is. So we would ask the committee if those conditions can be waived. That concludes my comments. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Do any committee members have questions for the agent? I believe there are none. And are there any, there were no delegations registered to speak on this. So are there any final questions or comments from the committee to staff or in general on this application? I will ask if any members are in favor of the point raised by the agent regarding the removal of conditions 8 and 9. if there were some discussion on that. Then if there's no further discussion, I'll ask, is there a member who wishes to put forth a motion? And please state if you are modifying or changing any of the conditions which have been attached. Member Emmett? Okay, to approve or deny? To approve. Is there a second? Could you state your reasons first though, please?
Okay, moved by myself, and did you find a seconder?
I'll ask for your motion first
Okay.
on the floor.
Moved by myself, seeking a seconder that application B 14-23 ES be approved as it suits with the County of Brant's Planning Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on this motion? Member Panay, all in favor? Starting with Member Emmett,
Yes.
Member Schmidt,
Yes.
Member Hamilton,
No.
Member Panay,
Yes.
Member Smith,
Yes.
Brown, yes. The motion has carried. The application has been approved with the conditions. Thank you. I will now introduce item 6.2 for application B1323 LG and turn it over to staff for the presentation of the report and the recommendation.
Good evening, Committee of Adjustment and members of the public. This is a consent application for lands located at 110 Burford Delhi Town Line Road within the geographic township of Burford. The subject lands are located north of Burford Delhi Town Line Road, east of Porter Town Line Road, south of Norwich Road, and west of Maple Avenue South. The lands may be known as 110 Burford Delhi Town Line Road are rectangular in shape with a frontage of 296 meters along Burford Delhi Town Line Road and a frontage of 300 meters along Norwich Road in a lot area of 40.46 hectares. The subject lands contain one residential dwelling and agricultural related buildings. The abutting lands to the east, municipally known as 96 Burford Delhi Town Line Road, are irregular in shape with a frontage of approximately 247 meters along Burford Delhi Town Line Road and a frontage of 146 meters along Norwich Road with a lot area of 46.19 hectares. And the subject lands contain one residential dwelling and agricultural related buildings. And the abutting lands further to the east, identified by roll number ending in 04310, are irregular in shape with a frontage of 395 meters along Maple Avenue South and a lot area of 29.27 hectares. The surrounding area consists of agricultural land uses and the subject lands are privately serviced. The applicant is seeking to reestablish the parcel municipally known as 110 Burford Delhi Town Line Road as it has inadvertently merged on title in 1974 by virtue of common ownership with the abutting parcels to the east. The application is technical as it proposes to sever a formerly separate parcel and reestablish the existing lot lines. The application is required in order to change the ownership of the severed parcel to a new family corporation, and the severed and retained lands will continue to be farmed, and no development is proposed as part of this consent application. The subject lands are designated as agriculture within the County of Brant official plan and zoned as agriculture and natural heritage within the County of Brant zoning bylaw 6116. No public comments were received as part of the public circulation. I am recommending approval of this consent application for the reasons outlined in my report. It is my professional recommendation that application B1323 LG be approved. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren, for the presentation. Do any committee members have questions or comments to staff on this application? Member Smith?
Through the chair to staff, so they inadvertently merged back in the 70s, but I'm just looking, so we're now going to create the new retained land at 75 hectares. Oh, I'm thinking acres. Apologies. So I'll ask my other question about the merger. Do you know how the applicants, and I can maybe ask them, do you know how the applicants found out that they merged? Like, did they recently find out that they merged, or did they know back in the 70s?
Through the chair, I would have to confirm with the applicants when they found out that it had merged.
Okay, I can ask. Thank you.
Any further comments, questions to staff? I believe there are none, and I believe the agent is present.
Yes.
Okay, I'll ask the agent.
Good evening again. I'm here with John Benbarlow. He's the owner of the farm. I will defer the question to you, John, I guess.
Okay, yes, we first owned 96. It was bought when I was born, the year I was born. So me and my brother, which is present back there too, have owned the farms, probably been farming together for 40 years. And we're starting to get older and maybe approaching retirement. And as of right now, none of our children are going to take over the farms. So we decided we would just split the farms now and make it easier for a transition later in life than wait until one of us has passed and can create a big problem. So he also plans, my brother Marcel also plans on building a new house on the property. And that's why they said he's going to form another corporation. So he's taking half the farms and I'm taking half the farms. They said this property has merged, but it's always had a separate tax bill. So all we would have to do is change the name on the tax bill, and that would be all. Thank you.
Any comments, questions to the applicant? I believe there are none, but I have a comment on condition 2. You are aware of condition 2 and you're in agreement with all the conditions.
Yes, the way it stands now, our plan is, the map is taken down, but the 96 would be all one parcel. And there's also another farm on the other side of Maple Avenue South. So 2 farms will be his, and I would take the remainder that's left. So.
Thank you. Any last questions to staff or the agent and applicant? I believe there are none, so I will request a mover on this application. Member Hamilton, can you please state your motion and reasoning?
I move that we accept application B13-23-LG with the conditions that have been attached because it meets the official plan and the zoning bylaws of the County of Brant.
Thank you, Member Hamilton. Is there a seconder for Member Schmidt? I will now call the vote, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Panag.
Yes.
Member Smith.
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion has carried. The application B1323LG has been approved. Thank you. I will now move to item 6.3 for application B18A1723LG. and turn it over to staff for their presentation of the report and the recommendation.
This is a consent and minor variance application for lands located at 2 Chapel Street within the geographic township of Paris. The subject lands are located north of Main Street, east of Chapel Street, and south of Dundas Street West. The subject lands contain one existing dwelling, which is proposed to be removed upon approval of this application. The existing lot is rectangular in shape with a lot area of 1,416.4 square meters and a frontage of 38.24 meters along Chapel Street, as well as a frontage of 38.12 meters along Dundas Street West. The surrounding area consists of residential land uses, and the subject lands are serviced with municipal water and sewer. Consent application is proposing the creation of one new residential lot within the settlement boundary of Paris on municipal servicing. The severed lands will have an area of approximately 711.6 square meters and a frontage of 19.1 meters along Chapel Street. And the retained lands will have an area of approximately 678.2 square meters and a frontage of 19.1 meters along Chapel Street. The minor variance application applies to the proposed severed lands and is seeking relief from Section 8, Table 8.2.1 to permit a reduced street setback of 2 meters along Dundas Street West, whereas a setback of 4.5 meters is required in order to facilitate future construction of a single detached dwelling. The subject lands are designated as urban residential within the County of Brant official plan and located within the primary urban settlement boundary of Paris. The lands are zoned as residential singles and semis R2 within the County of Brant zoning bylaw 6116. One public comment was received as part of the public circulation with the and provided within the amended agenda package. The comments had concern with regards to the retained land's interior side yard setback, whether the proposed development will impact the site drainage and existing trees on the property. The required interior side yard setback within the residential singles and semis zone is 1.2 meters. Based on the current proposal, the applicant is proposing 1.56 meters to the south property line, and a detailed review of the proposed new lot development will be completed as part of the building permit review process. As well, a lot grading and drainage plan will be required to demonstrate both the severed and the retained parcels can be developed in accordance with the County of Brant engineering standards. And a tree inventory, protection, and planting plan will be required to identify the existing trees within the development that will require protection, removal, or replacement. I am recommending approval of the consent and minor variance applications for the reasons outlined by report. It is my professional recommendation that applications B1823LG, A1723LG be approved subject to the attached conditions. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren, for the presentation. I'll ask the committee members, do you have any comments or questions to staff? Member Panay, please go ahead.
Through the chair, question to the staff. The staff, did they do any inventory of the trees they have to be removed?
Through the chair, on the site development plan that was provided, they did make a note of the existing trees. And as of right now, there are 3 trees that are proposed to be removed in order to accommodate future developments. We do also have a replanting ratio of 2 to 1. So they will have to replace every tree that's removed with 2 new trees.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions to staff? Member Smith.
Through the chair to staff, do you know if there's a required sight line triangle on that corner lot, the severed parcel? I'm just asking because if we're reducing that setback to just 2 meters, I just want to make sure there's adequate sight lines. I wasn't too sure if there was a requirement. I didn't see engineering's comments, so apologies.
Through the chair, so no required sightline triangle was required from development engineering. They did note that a 0.3 meter reserve was required to prevent access to Dundas Street West.
Any further comments or questions? Could it possibly be they weren't really concerned about that because on Dundas Street, it isn't really an open access. Like there's only one house around the corner, so I don't think there would be a lot of traffic. Yeah.
To the chair, they would have also checked for sightlines when they did the initial site inspection as well. So that would have been one of the things that they would have evaluated for.
And as far as replacing the trees at 2-to-1, these lots, once the original residence is demolished, and I noticed the trees are of a fair size, so would there be enough room on each lot? Because the 2-to-1, and I never really thought of it before, so the 2-to-1 will only apply to the new lot?
Through the chair, so it would be, since they're proposing development on both lots, it would actually be applicable to all of the existing trees.
Okay.
And it is required as a condition of the consent application. So they would have to provide that to us in advance.
Okay, thank you. And then, are there any further comments from the committee? Then I would ask, is the applicant or their agent here to add?
They're online.
Hello. Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. The only thing I can really add is
Could
I have already.
Excuse me, could I get your name for the record, please?
Oh, I apologize. Peter Ligori.
Thank you.
I have already spoken to the resident just south of the property about his concern of one tree that borders our property lines. His concern was actually that the tree has split, and this week we had an arborist out, and I guess fortunately the tree needs to be removed because of this split. So it's actually beneficial that we're removing it, and it's not going to be able to impact his home, and we'll be able to replace it with 2 new trees that don't have any decay. And speaking to development engineering at the start of this process, they informed me that no triangle was required because in the past they had taken a road allowance or a road widening, which kind of was in place of that triangle if anything was done there in the future.
Thank you. Are there any committee members who wish to question the applicant? Member Hamilton, please go ahead.
Through the chair to the applicant, how many trees are going to be taken down? I believe there's 2 large ones in the front yard, but along Dundas Street, are those trees on your property? Those large honey locust ones that go down the side, all the way down along Dundas Street, are they yours or are they sitting on the county?
They are all county property.
And will any of those be touched?
No, they're not on our property, so we have no intention.
That's not the question. The question was, will any of them be touched? It doesn't matter. When you go to the west, if you only got 2 meters and you give up a third of a meter, you're going to impact some of those trees that are sitting on county line.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand. Those trees are, without measuring, I would say approximately 1 meter onto county property already, and then we would be building just over 2 meters off. So I don't know if I understand the question. I apologize.
My understanding how tree roots go is they don't go straight down, they go out towards, therefore you're impacting the tree by going even 2 meters.
Oh, I see the concern. That is something I can ask the arborist who was there on this week. But from our discussions walking around, we looked at any tree that could potentially fall into the hole when we do the overdig, and he had no concern whatsoever with anything on the Dundas side of the property.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, you're overdig, but you've got to push back the topsoil in order to get at your overdig and apply that, and that may impact those trees as well.
Unfortunately, I would have to have the arborist comment on that. I only know when we do overdig, we do not touch any land after the dig. So from the foundation wall, we do a 3.5 foot overdig, and then from there, nothing is touched.
So you will not move any topsoil after 3 meters from the side of the wall.
3.5 feet.
Yeah, 1 meter.
Yes.
No topsoil will be adjusted or touched.
There's no reason to, no.
Okay, I just finished building a house and it was. So I'm just curious, that's all. All right, thank you.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Are there any last questions to the applicant? Then are there any final questions to staff? Member Smith, please go ahead.
Through the chair to staff. So if some of those medicinal trees are actually impacted and they end up dying, let's say, or they're damaged, is there recourse for the applicant to replace those trees, or will that now be a burden of the municipality?
Through the chair, I could touch base with our Parks and Forestry Department and see how, if that does happen, how it should be dealt with.
Yeah, the replanting plan and the protection plan is a requirement. It's just unfortunately sometimes when construction happens, you don't know what's going to happen. So I think that would be some reassurance at least.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any further comments or questions? I believe there are none. So is the committee prepared to make motion on this? Oh, yes, there was a delegation. I believe there is a public delegation. Can you please come forward? I do apologize. We got on there.
Why wouldn't you come out? This is great. I'm Andrew McPherson, representing the Hamels who live adjacent. Need my address?
Yes, could you give your address?
2770 Sheffield Place in London. A son-in-law of the Hamels, so I visit quite often. Thanks for providing the time that I could make this presentation, and thanks to Ms. Diamond Smith and Graham for providing information to me, because the initial comments that you have on your agenda, those were submitted fairly quickly when we found out what was going on, and have taken some time now to review the additional information, and so we have additional comments that kind of expand on what we had on paper there. Frankly, the Hamels were quite surprised and upset about what was being proposed. They hadn't heard anything about the severance, variances, etc., what was being proposed from the applicant. And of course, they're already dealing with big changes in the neighborhood. The road is shortly being ripped up. And this plan in their minds is a really big change for them. They've lived in Paris for 50 years at this location, and totally out of the blue. They would never expect something like this to happen on their street, let alone adjacent to them. A lot of changes are happening in Paris, and it just takes a little getting used to that. So we're looking at with that lens in mind. Change happens, and we are reviewing the documents. And I've got some comments here I hope can help the process and get through this. for the benefit of the applicant and the existing residents if possible. So the report is fairly thorough as far as the process for submitting an application for a minor variance. And in this case, of course, the application provides additional benefit to the landowner. I assume they wouldn't go through this process if it isn't providing some additional benefit, either in more homes, larger homes, additional profit, etc. And that's fine. But in the report from Ms. Graham on page 10, she does provide a little description of how you assess a minor variance, which is interesting because there's no definition in the official plan or a zoning bylaw. So it was good to see that. And some of those comments are addressed in the plan, but I think from the neighbor's perspective, I think I'd like to spend just a couple minutes here and talk to that. If I could read it here, a variance may be considered minor where the scale of the request is marginal and the proposed relief will not result in a greater than minor adverse impact on adjacent properties. So I know that reports start at very large, high-level official plans, county documents, city plans. This gets very specific to the adjacent neighbor, but it does say you're talking about adjacent properties here, and I guess the Hamels have two specific concerns about this process. Others have touched on this, that there is a request to reduce the exterior side yard setback from 4.5 meters to 2, which does push the whole house further towards Dundas Street, probably sticking out a lot further than most of the houses on Dundas, but that's a 56% reduction, and it's not up to me to decide, but that doesn't seem too minor from my perspective, our perspective. And that variance then provides opportunity to provide 2 larger homes on those lots, increasing the scale of development. Again, whether that's minor or not, perhaps the committee could assess that better. But we're more concerned about this second part of that, which is the adverse impact to adjacent properties. So the variance in permitting 2 larger homes pushes the southerly home 6.5 meters closer to the Hamels residence. It does comply with the zoning bylaw, but that's a significant change. That's a big impact for the neighbors. If you look at the plan that was presented, and we may have to put it back up again, the southerly lot that's being proposed and the southerly house will now stick out at least 3 meters in front of the Hamels house and about 4 meters behind their house. Again, complies with zoning, but that again is a significant change, is because the lot drops off and these are back walkouts. So if you can picture this, the finished floor elevation of that new house essentially will sit 1.7 meters or 6 feet above their backyard. So when they're in their backyard, they're now looking up at a house. Right now it's green vegetation. They'll be looking up at that house, plus the story above it, plus the roof in their backyard. Again, a major change for them. And we've talked briefly about grading and impacts on trees. Not a lot of space down that side. I think they're having 1.5 meters, and as suggested, they're going to excavate at least 1 meter for the foundation. Aside from the tree that's there that has the crack, and I appreciate Mr. Gorey looking into that finally. As of yesterday, I hadn't heard that he'd spoken with the Hamels about that tree. So thanks for him looking into that. It does have a big crack in it, and they were worried about that. But with those grading issues, at least 1 meter outside of that, there's very little room left on that side, and there will be impacts to that tree. Maybe that's not an issue, but there's also a nice hedge along the property line between these 2 properties. And we'd like to see if that can be protected. Again, there are root zones, as discussed, for all of these pieces of vegetation. We just want to make sure that the grading does work. On the plan, it shows all that drainage going along the property around to the back of the property on the proposed lot. Not sure how that's going to work without changing the grades along the property line or adding retaining walls. And I think the discussion was that further detail would be completed through the building permit process, but that's kind of late in the process for the neighbors to have any input. So I'm hoping that we can look at that on site and understand what the drawing actually shows. Basically, the imposition of this new house impinges on the use and enjoyment of their deck, which is right there at the back property, out from the first level on the corner of their house closest to this lot, the patio and their backyard. This is a major impact for Bev and Pat, in our minds, not minor. So we'd ask, not that you'd forget the variance and put a stop to everything, but that we add conditions to the minor variance if we could. And I have these written out here, and I can provide you a copy, subject to the approval and amendments that the committee may have. But if we can address this adverse impact, we'd ask that the applicant work with the neighbors at 4 Chapel Street to deal with the adverse impacts on the adjacent lot, as per the report and the official plan, at the applicant's expense and prior to any building permits being issued, by addressing the privacy issues with a 1.8 meter high decorative wood fence from the front of their house down to the back of the new lot, which then covers a portion of that new activity that's going to happen very close to their house compared to what happens now. And where that house sticks out beyond the back of their house, if they can add additional vegetation there, and we're requesting 4 meters high, and I can make some suggestions about what that might mean, a vegetation screening to provide a bit of a hedge there between their patio and backyard and deck and this big new house that's going to sit only 1.5 meters off the property line. And some refinements as needed to the lot grading and driveway construction to minimize impacts on vegetation. And again, that may happen as a matter of course, but it'd be nice to have that discussion with the applicant beforehand, so we're all understanding what that's going to look like on the ground. We feel these are reasonable requests to address those adverse impacts. And if I could ask that the applicant, they can contact me directly. I'm speaking with the Hamels, but I would like to speak with the applicant, be there when he's talking to the Hamels. Of course, they're in their mid-80s, and all of this is somewhat confusing to them, a lot of jargon. I'm familiar with it. So if we can deal with that directly with the applicant, that would be great. And again, I have a copy of these conditions if you'd like them. If it helps you amend the application and the conditions, that would be great. And I thank you for your time. I just have one extra copy.
Would you like to
Sorry.
share it with them?
Sure. It's in that section in blue there. It was a lot. I mean, I can read them again if you'd like, or perhaps Ms. Brown could if she would like. And it doesn't sound like, sorry if I'm going on here unintendedly, but it doesn't sound too onerous, given that they have to replace trees anyways at 2 to 1. And if 1 or 2 or 3 are coming out, perhaps some of those can be used as trees to screen the size of the house from the neighbor's property. So there may be no additional cost at all to implement some of these, and I hope we can work on that. And that these are not unreasonable conditions for the variance suggested. Thanks.
Do any committee members have comments, questions? Member Smith?
I have a question. It probably goes through to staff, and I don't know if you can answer this on the spot, but is there established building line on that road? Would that be taken into consideration for that front yard setback?
Through you, Madam Chair, the established building line wouldn't apply in this case because of the proposed 2 dwellings. There would be the 1 dwelling to the south, and then there would be being a corner lot. So the established building line principle doesn't apply in this case. Typically, the established building lot would apply if there were houses on either side to establish that building line.
And are there any comments or questions on the proposed additional conditions? Was there a second public delegation on this? Okay, not on this. Could I ask the applicant if you have any comments to address the concerns raised?
I guess the only comments to really be made is in the past, anything we've ever done, we've always worked with the neighbors to ensure everyone's happy. Fences and so on have been provided. Making it a condition, I would have to speak to the actual owners of the property. My parents who own it, I am just here representing them because they're older in years and not looking to, like the gentleman's helping his in-laws. I'm doing the same. But I don't know if I totally understand the comments to the minor variance where he's asking. The minor variance doesn't affect the side yard setback, from my understanding. I may be wrong, but the minor variance is the side yard setback on the north side. So that I understand. I'm not really sure how we can help other than working with them. And obviously, I don't know if 1.4 meters is county bylaw for a fence. I believe it's 6 feet. So that would be very close. But we're more than happy to work with them on a side note to make sure everyone's happy. They will be my parents' neighbors. We don't want to start that off on a wrong foot.
Thank you. Could I ask staff to confirm the applicant's interpretation of the minor variance?
To the chair, yes, so the minor variance is required. Are you able to hear me? Sorry, so the minor variance is required for the street setback or the exterior side yard setback off of Dundas Street West. The interior side yard setback would be 1.2 meters as what's required within the zoning bylaw.
Do any committee members wish to add any comments or have further questions? Member Emmett.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the staff, this 2-meter setback, is that the driveway where the car would probably sit in front of the garage?
Could I just interject and maybe ask, is it Gary or Sue who could put the drawing up again? That's what I've been trying to follow with in the discussion. I think that would be helpful for everyone. Where's he? There.
Through the chair, the proposed driveway for the severed lands is proposed to be towards the south lot line of the severed lands. We do have specific provisions within the zoning bylaw that would prohibit them. They also won't have access from Dundas Street West for a car. That will be eliminated with the 0.3 reserve. And it appears based on the site plan that they are proposing a retaining wall as well towards the north lot line of the severed parcel.
So am I to understand that the 2-meter variance is on the corner property facing what won't have the driveway? The other properties on Chapel Street, the other house, we're not worrying about it. Is that what I'm to understand? Okay, thank you.
Any further comments, questions? Member Hamilton. Oh, Member Peneg has a comment.
Madam Chair, I have a question to the owners. What's the size of the dwelling?
That's there, you mean? The current dwelling.
How big are the houses they're proposing?
Could the applicant please respond?
If you give me one quick second, I believe it is indicated on that site plan. Now, having said that, these are proposals. They are not definitive of what will be built.
No, I believe he's asking for the current dwelling. That was your question? No, the future dwelling. The 2 proposed ones.
It's very hard to read on this drawing.
Do you have the size?
If you give me one quick second, they're 15 by 15.
It's 277 meters.
I'm going to say about 1,800 square feet, but I would like to just run that through a calculator before I say that. My calculation is 2,200 square feet, including the garage space.
For each residence.
Assuming they were built as bungalows. That is the footprint.
Does that answer your question?
Can they be reduced to accommodate the setbacks?
So the property on the south side meets all setbacks. The reason we went with the minor variance wasn't to get a larger footprint. It was more to maintain the overall look of the neighborhood. As you travel along Chapel Street, they are wide. What's the proper word I'm looking for? They're not deep homes. They're wide homes. They're not high homes. They're more estate style homes where the properties are not large, but they are larger, wider homes. So by providing the additional space on the north property, we're able to maintain that front appeal as opposed to having a shorter, out of place home.
Thank you.
The 2,200 square feet, if you think about it, an average garage is 20 by 20. So that is an 1,800 square foot bungalow.
Thank you. Any further comment? Yes, member?
Thank you.
That's it. Any last comments, member Hamilton?
Yeah, through the chair to the applicant, you said that you would have an arborist come out and evaluate some of the things we previously talked about. I would like to just incorporate that in condition number 6, that the arborist report would go to the environmental planning department who looks after the tree thing, just to ensure that we're aware, because if we approve it, they look at it but never see it, what have we got to go back on? So if I could propose that as a addition, or point 2 to the condition number 6. I guess any comments from the applicant?
Oh, I apologize. I don't see a problem with that. So you would just want a letter written by M&M Tree Service stating that, in their opinion, we would have to do a measurement. I don't know off the top of my head. For argument's sake, being 4 meters away from the tree roots will not affect the integrity of the tree.
Yes, that the county owns. So I would say I'm not qualified enough to read that report and do it, but if we put it in that they would deal with the people that look at with the report for the tree inventory is all I'm saying. We just incorporate and add that to that your information there.
I personally don't feel that that's an issue to do, to have someone look and make a educated report, for sure.
All right, thank you. We'll incorporate it.
Any other comments, questions for staff, applicant, public? I believe there are none, so I will ask for a mover on this. There are 2 separate applications. Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it's order or I can ask a question, because the applicant suggested it may not even be bungalows, it may be 2-story units, which is a bigger impact for the neighborhood, I would think. When will that be confirmed and how will we deal with it later?
Well, I believe what the applicant stated was that he was trying to keep the character of the neighborhood with wider houses rather than higher houses.
Just looking for some assurances that the reason I submitted the comments the way it was, that we could wrap it all up and do a
Well, I believe the committee has put forth a modification to one of the conditions to try and have more specific protection on the trees. The application will be dealt with in two separate motions for the severance and for the variance. So the committee may suggest at this point, there are no specific conditions to the minor variance, I've noted, but perhaps there will be an emotion. Thank you. Then with that, I'll ask the committee to bear in mind that there are two motions required on this for the severance and the minor variance. And if you could state if you are requesting or supporting any modifications to the conditions that were originally attached. Could I have a mover? Member Smith?
Can I start with the severance?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the severance subject to amended conditions, with the addition of a condition that the minor variance be approved with no appeals. An additional condition that a fence and vegetative buffer be provided abutting the neighboring property to the south. And an amendment to condition 6, that the tree inventory protection planting plan be prepared demonstrating trees within and outside the development that will require protective removal and replacement. And that the letter also include consideration for any trees that may be damaged on municipal property.
So you have added two conditions, right? We will now be at 14 conditions with a modification to condition 6.
Yes.
Thank you. And this is for application B1823 LG. Do we have a seconder? Member Hamilton? I will now request the vote, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Member Schmidt.
No.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Penag.
Yes.
Member Smith.
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion to approve application B1823 LG with modifications to the commission conditions and added ones has been approved by the committee. The vote is carried. I will now request a motion for the variance, and perhaps Member Smith can do the same since she started.
I'll also make a motion to approve A1723 LG as the minor variance meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act.
And that's your only reasoning, you're not modifying any conditions. Thank you. Is there a second for this motion? Member Hamilton, I'll now call the vote, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Member Schmidt.
No.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Penag.
Yes.
Member Smith.
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion has carried. Application A1723 LG has been approved. Thank you. I will again note that item 6.4 on the agenda has been removed tonight, so I hope no one has waited around for that application. I'll now introduce item 6.5 for application A1223 LG and turn it over to staff for the presentation of the report and the recommendation.
This is a minor variance application for lands located at 890 Mount Pleasant Road within the geographic township of Oakland. The subject lands are located south of Mount Pleasant Road and to the west of the Mount Pleasant settlement boundary. The subject lands contain one residential dwelling with a frontage of approximately 60.56 meters on Mount Pleasant Road in a lot area of approximately 0.32 hectares. These subject lands are privately serviced. The applicant is seeking relief from section 4.5 of the zoning bylaw to permit an additional residential unit on a parcel with a lot area of 0.32 hectares, whereas a lot area of 0.4 hectares is required. The applicants had previously undergone a consent and minor variance application, B45, A21, A24, 22 LG, which received approval from the Committee of Adjustment on July 21st, 2022, to facilitate a minor lot line adjustment, permitted increased lot coverage for accessory structures of 6%, and to recognize the remaining farm parcel and non-farm parcel areas. The subject lands are designated as agriculture within the County of Brant official plan and are zoned as agriculture within the County of Brant zoning bylaw 6116. No comments were received from the public as part of the public circulation. I am recommending approval of this minor variance application for the reasons outlined in my report. It is my professional recommendation that minor variance application A1223LG be approved. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren, for the presentation. I'll ask committee members, are there any questions or comments to staff on this? Member Hamilton, please go ahead.
It's a comment through the chair to staff. This is one of the first ones where the existing building becomes the ARU and the new structure will be the primary home, correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. They are proposing to turn the existing dwelling into an additional residential unit so that they can facilitate construction of a future primary dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
Member Smith, please go ahead.
Through the chair to staff, so where's the existing septic? I'm assuming it's behind the existing home, like are they tapping into that existing septic or putting a new one in?
Through the chair, I may have to defer to the applicant just to confirm the location.
Current septic is right at the rear of the existing dwelling, and there will be a new septic for the rooftop.
Any other comments, questions to staff? Then I believe the applicant is present. Do you wish to add anything to the staff report? Could I have your name for the record? Thank you. Do committee members have any comments, questions to the applicant? And this is when there are no public delegations. I thought so. Thank you then. Are there any final comments or questions on this application? Then I'll request a mover on this application. Member Hamilton?
I move that we accept minor variance A12-23LG because it's minor in nature and it meets the 4 standards for the zoning.
Subject to the attached conditions?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a seconder for this? Member Schmidt? I'll now call the vote, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Member Schmidt?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member Penag?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion has carried. The application for 81223LG has been approved. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Good evening. This is a minor variance application for lands located at 874 Mount Pleasant Road within the geographic township of Oakland. The subject lands are located between King Street North and CKPC Road, south of Mount Pleasant Road. The surrounding area consists of suburban residential and agricultural land uses and the Highway 24 corridor to the west. The applicant is requesting relief from Section 4.4, Table 4.4.1 through minor variance to permit a total lot coverage for accessory structures of 205 square meters, whereas the lesser of 15% of the total lot area, or 140 square meters, is permitted within the suburban residential zone. The application is required in order to establish additional space within the accessory structures for personal storage. The applicants are requesting this increase to allow for more personal storage within the shipping containers and storage shed. All shipping containers presented on screen are currently existing. The picture labeled as number 3 will be moved beside shipping container number 2. For the committee's information, as of February 2022, bylaw number 19/2022 was passed, stating that shipping containers can be considered an accessory structure and there is no limit to how many can be located on a property as long as they conform to Section 4.35 of the zoning bylaw, which outlines regulations for shipping containers. The shipping container shall be subject to the accessory use regulations table of Section 4.4 with respect to setbacks and height restrictions. Under Section 45, subsection 1 of the Planning Act, any minor variance application must be measured against the 4 tests of a minor variance. In my professional opinion, the application to increase the total lot coverage for accessory structures to 205 square meters at 874 Mount Pleasant Road is minor, considering that they are meeting the zoning bylaw requirements with the exception of a total lot coverage. The subject lands are designated suburban residential within the County of Brant official plan and located within the secondary urban settlement boundary of Mount Pleasant. Subject lands are currently zoned suburban residential SR within the County of Brant zoning bylaw 6116. One public comment was received as part of the public circulation and provided within the report and the agenda package. Not included within the committee agenda this evening is a condition of approval of this minor variance application, which we are proposing to include to require that the applicants to provide confirmation from the building division that any required building permits have been obtained. As a result of the minor variance review, staff is of the opinion that the request is in keeping with the overall intent of the zoning bylaw, in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The request is minor in nature and will not negatively impact adjacent land uses. I am recommending approval of the minor variance application A1423LG, subject to the added conditions. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Haley, for the presentation. I'll now ask the committee, do you have any comments or questions to staff on this application? Member Smith, please go ahead.
Through the chair to staff, what was that bylaw that you referenced? Was that the zoning bylaw or was that a different bylaw under the county for the shipping containers? You sent a number, but I didn't pick it up.
Bylaw number 1922.
So what bylaw, is that the zoning bylaw that allows the shipping containers?
Through the chair, I believe so, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any further comments, questions? To staff? Then I would ask, is the applicant or their agent present? And both?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're online and in person. Okay, thank you. Could you please state your name? Do you have anything you wish to add to the staff report?
Yes, good evening. I'm agent on behalf of the applicants, Courtney Boyd.
Okay.
In addition to the staff report, we did include, there is an addendum to today's agenda with some photographs. One of the comments you saw from the neighboring property relates to the use of the sea containers and the shed. We've included some photographs that show that all of the structures are being used for storage. It is all accessory to the residential dwelling on site. You'll also see at attachment 5 being the site photos that were taken by staff. The only neighboring residential property has a tree border along that property line. So there will be no impact on the view of the neighboring property, as one of the sea containers is next to the garage, so it's not visible. And secondly, 2 of the sea containers are also blocked by that tree line. There are no comments towards the staff's requirement for the condition for building permits. That will not be an issue. The other comments that I will make is that given the location of the structures, they are also not visible necessarily from the road. And the south border and the east border is agricultural land, so there's no other residential neighbors that would be affected.
Thank you. Then does the applicant wish to add to the agent's comments? No further comments from you. Then I'll ask the committee members, do you have any questions or comments to the applicant or their agent? Member Hamilton, please go ahead.
Through the staff to the applicant or the agent. Currently, the one container is not in the position it's going to rest in when it's finished, right? It's in the middle of the yard right now. And what is
I apologize.
And what is in that container right now?
Through the chair. So if you will look at the addendum that was provided on page 8 is the sea container, and that's the image of what's currently contained in there. So it's just additional storage and tools. The sea container is being moved, and I can address that question as well. So currently what's happening is some cleanup on the property by the owner to remove some wood that's along that area to move the sea container there.
Thank you. Just to follow up that, I'm looking at your picture on page 8. What type of tools are in there? Is that for a business or are they for recreational use?
Through the chair, my understanding is that everything is recreational use and not tied to any business. There's no industrial business use related to this property, no home business or anything of the sort.
I'm just looking at the, I don't know, the propane tanks and a couple other things. I'm not sure how that's residential. Maybe the applicant can explain exactly what I'm looking at.
Yes, could I ask that the applicant come to the podium and perhaps you can add to the comments from your agent?
Hello, my name's Jeff Byrne and my wife Valerie Byrne. To answer your questions, the propane tanks are merely for my trailer,
Type of
camping trailer.
Okay. And is that acetylene torches on top, or what's that on?
No, I don't have acetylene torches.
I'm just wondering what that circular is on top
That's
of it.
sanding discs and C-clamps.
Okay. It's just trying to pick them out. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Any comments, questions to the applicant? Since you are available right now, I'll question, I know that some of the comments that were submitted not supporting your application or that there were loud noises, there's a business being conducted. What are the loud noises referring to?
None of the loud noises come from any of the containers. There's no hydro in any of them. We merely keep the containers for storage, birdseed, and any miscellaneous stuff that we need to go into. As far as loud noises, I do work in my garage. I make custom fishing rods. Maybe I make 12 a year, but that's about it. There's no mass production of any kind. And it's just a side hobby that I do.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions to the applicant? I would then I believe there is a public delegation that wishes to speak to this application, and if they're present or online. Are they present? Could you please come forward and state your name for the record?
We are the Tuzinskis. We own all the properties surrounding this property application.
Okay, thank you.
Halina Tuzinski and Jan Tuzinski. Our agent, unfortunately, is out of the country, and we apply many times for delaying the meeting that our agent could be present. Unfortunately, we were denied.
Okay, thank you.
So we are with no agent.
So you would wish to, we have your comments that were submitted. Do you wish to add to them?
Yes.
I saw only one comment from us. There were numerous emails with your lawyer, with your planners, and with the gentleman who was visiting on April to deal with the shipping containers.
And the
So
damage to the trees.
So the point is this: we are here to object to this application. We don't want any variances to be allowed. 874 Mount Pleasant Road is an estate residential 2-acre lot. Why is township using rules for suburban residential lots? .874 has numerous shipping containers and numerous buildings. Why have the owners not been charged? Recently, why did the township charge the man on Oak Hill Drive for having shipping containers on his property? And why did the township force the man to remove all shipping containers? The township gave him 3 days to do it. The precedent already is established. I can't believe how unfair and biased township is. Fairness demands that 874 Mount Pleasant Road application not proceed. 874 Mount Pleasant Road is a 2-acre estate residential lot. Why doesn't the township use rules for estate residential lots? By the way, our property is affected the most, as we mentioned in the beginning. We surround this property. The only frontage of the property touches the township. Otherwise, we surround this property. And you can refer to our agent's numerous emails. Thank you. Forgive me. There's one other important thing. We're talking about shipping containers. The problem I'm seeing right here, the letter you sent to my home for this application, and I will read, well, the second sentence down. 874 Mount Pleasant Road are seeking relief from section 44, table 441 through minor variance to permit a total area for accessory structures of 205 square meters. I calculated that is 2,206.67 square feet. We don't want any more structures allowed on this property. All right, there's no mention about shipping containers in the application. However, deal with the shipping container problem like you did with the Oak Hill Drive man. And we don't want 2,000 square feet is a very large structure. And the word is plural, not one structure, structures. Nobody told us how many structures he's going to build at 2,206 square feet. So please tell us.
Okay, just to summarize, I believe staff addressed how shipping containers came to be in the county of Brant as being allowed for storage.
How many?
Well,
and how junky?
This is where the variance is coming in, because it's not a question of how many. It's a matter of they wouldn't have to just use shipping containers. They could put up various little structures like garden sheds they buy at Canadian Tire or hardware stores or whatever. Those form however many they are, you take their total area. So say one is 100 square feet, another is 300 square feet, and that you compare to the total lot, and that's how you get the percentages of lot coverage.
We object that that big area, 2,000, almost 300 square feet, would be permanently changed from residential area to
Excuse me, it's estate residential right now.
Yes, we.
And it's, her concern is it's going.
But the issue is how large a percentage of the lot is being covered by the structures. And that is, a minor variance can be
It's
brought
not minor, it's humongous area and it's going to be changed to industrial area. And we don't want to live beside industrial property and a junkyard of shipping containers. We have a beautiful, beautiful 3 acres lot. Rest of the surrounding area is our farm, quiet, peaceful, beautiful. And now we are, maybe our neighbor is going to build a little factory. It will fit on 2,000, almost 300 square feet area.
And I would only ask if the applicant can address some of these concerns.
Because what will prevent him? What will prevent him? That is going to be changed permanently.
Well, he is living in an area that would prohibit a major industrial operation.
Nothing will prohibit him. We are living, my husband is the 4th generation living in that area. We sold the 2 acres to the neighbor 11 years ago, which we regret a lot.
Then I can only ask the applicant or their agent to address some of the delegation's concerns.
Sure, I would be happy to step in and address. I can only address some of them. I can't address the notice or what's written on there. As for the structures that are being placed, it's what's proposed. One of the shipping containers has been there before they purchased the property from the neighbors that are giving the delegation. There's the new garden shed, which respectfully I wouldn't suggest is an eyesore. I again remind the committee that there is a complete barrier of trees and bush that cover the property line. For the commons of 2,000 square feet, the proposed variance will result in lot coverage of 2.5%. While it's 2,000 square feet, it's in comparison to 87,000 square feet that's made up of that lot. So that's the comparison there. I don't know, there's no additional structures being proposed. It's what's there currently. So there's no addition. This would be the maximum.
Thank you.
We object. The area is going to be purpose industrial. Industrial area and estate residential. Is it the new way we are going to have residential areas?
Do you have any further comments to add? Because we understand that you are objecting. We've heard your reasoning for it.
Trees?
And is there any other reason?
Yes. The trees these people are applying and talking about are on my property, our property. There's 2 rows of emerald cedar trees, probably taller than us. These people have damaged it. The inspector from the township came out in April and he saw that because right on our property line, the neighbor dug a hole, I don't know how deep, and he took a vibrator machine all day. It was shaking my house and compacting gravel. So it's a foundation which I believe is on my property. For sure, my trees have been damaged and all the grass has been killed.
Please come and inspect because the damage is huge. Your agent wrote emails and asked for inspection. Terribly damaged.
We can only, as a committee, we can only address minor variance for the lot coverage. We cannot address disputes between neighbors with regards to legal concerns. I would only suggest that you obtain possibly a proper survey to obtain proper property lines.
We do have.
Okay, well then you would need
trees
to
belongs
raise
to
the
us.
matter with your lawyer and initiate whatever actions you feel comfortable with or enter into discussions with the neighbors. So if there are no further items you wish to add regarding your input, I would suggest we're done.
I will just to do one last for the members here. Please review this application number A1423LG. In the first paragraph, it's made reference to suburban residential SR zone. This is incorrect. It is estate residential, and the house I live in is also estate residential. There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
It's only 2 acres and so many containers already, and the area is going to change to industrial facility. We are afraid so.
Okay.
Member to address the zoning that is being referred to on page 154 of the application.
I can confirm that it is suburban residential. I don't know. Hello? Okay. So I can confirm that is suburban residential, and estate residential is a historic zoning from 2016. So it's been changed since 2016 to suburban residential.
The lot may have been created from your farm under the old planning provisions for estate residential. In today's planning language, we do not refer to estate residential. So the suburban residential, as confirmed by staff, is in fact correct for that zoning on that property.
One more point. Everything that's on that property is too close to our property line. Please review. Please review. The submitted drawing from the Ontario Land Surveyor, I spoke to him. He was unaware of his drawing being used. It was doctored and manipulated. The dates were changed. His date, his certification was erased, and it's been changed. That's the point. Weston Ruska. I lost my train of thought. So, and the picture from Google's Maps, that's outdated as well. Somebody printed it using last month's date, but that is old because I can tell by the look it's not current. I don't know from Google's map what year that is. So somebody here should find out from what year that is too.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I will ask the committee members, do you have any further comments or questions on this application? Member Smith?
This is more of a question through the chair to staff. So the zoning bylaw, and this is just me looking at it, says that the building department can really determine whether the character of the shipping containers kind of meets the residential use. So they may be required to do cladding. They might be required to put a roof on the structure. I'm just wondering staff's opinion if other historic examples of this, if the building department has gone that far or if we should be including a condition for that. Sorry, I'm looking at you, Dan or Haley.
I can take that one through you, Madam Chair. As we mentioned, the policies for permitting shipping containers as accessory structures is fairly new. The concerned residents mentioned an example on Oak Hill Drive, and that was an existing shipping container that was reviewed as part of a a bylaw enforcement complaint, which the mechanism to permit that structure resulted in an application to council to permit the structure. This was all done prior to the zoning bylaw being updated. I believe the update as part of a housekeeping item was underway. So these are new policies that we are applying. There is a section in our zoning that does permit some modifications to the structure. It permits modifications to a shipping container by way of the applicant wishing to improve the visual impacts, the aesthetics of that structure. It also mentions the building division having the ability to do so. I'm not aware of any examples where building has requested changes to the aesthetics of that shipping container. I don't have any examples for you, and staff haven't included any conditions to lean on that provision.
So if I may ask this question to, well, I will ask the applicant first, if I may. If a condition was included for some aesthetics to be improved, so they didn't actually look like shipping containers, maybe in terms of painting those structures as it goes through the building permit process, is that something that you would be willing to consider?
In fact, one of them is in the process of painting, and the one that I see is actually.
Excuse me, can you please come up and respond to
Just
these?
through the chair, just the microphone is important so that your solicitor can hear
Sorry
your
about
response
that.
as well.
To answer that question, one of the containers has already been cladded that we mainly see, and the back section has started to be painted green to camouflage any bright green or bright colors. And I have no problem painting them green or to camouflage them at all. In fact, I would want to anyways.
Thank you.
Any last comments? Member Panay?
Through the chair, to the staff or the owners, could there be a limit on the containers? How many containers could be in the yard at a time? Or should some of them be stored inside?
I would ask staff to answer that because I believe it's not the number of containers that's regulated, it's the lot coverage. So as my example, whether it's a container or a garden shed, it takes up a certain percentage of the lot. If staff could confirm that.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. It doesn't have to be a shipping container, it can be a shed, but for this sake, it is a shipping container. So it's for the overall lot coverage of this application.
So when the bylaw changed, it didn't refer to any number of containers, it just referred to it as an accessory structure, basically.
Correct, as long as it meets the zoning bylaw requirements.
And Member Smith?
When the, sorry,
Oh,
again, when the outside storage, like in the M2 zoning, they allow outside storage. Wouldn't that be considered as a outside storage, whether it's allowed or not allowed in the zoning bylaw?
Through the chair, no. That's not considered within this zone.
Just so I'm understanding correctly, you, by your outdoor storage, you mean like if you had a boat or a trailer and it's sitting on a paved or the grass? Is that what you're referring to?
Anywhere in the yard.
Okay. Okay. Member Smith?
Thank you.
Through the chair, and this, I don't know, maybe this question is staff. Without setting precedents, even though you still are going with the maximum coverage of the lot, you could still say, we allow the maximum coverage if the committee wanted to put this condition on there. But that would only allow to a maximum of 3 shipping containers. They could still build onto the garage, but we would limit the shipping container number. Maybe it's more of a staff comment.
Through you, Madam Chair, again, new policies, always fun to deal with. I think the reason for the minor variance is to ask for additional area dedicated to accessory structures, and this is how the number that they're requesting is how they plan to get there, is with the number of accessory structures. This number could be achieved with one structure or 2. If the committee wished to limit the number of shipping containers, again, it's limiting the number of accessory structures. So I guess we almost have to forget the nature of the type of structure. It is an accessory structure, and that's how it's identified in the zoning.
Any further comments, questions? Member Panay, please.
Madam Chair, I think the complaint from the neighbor is that how many containers gonna be in the backyard even after the lot coverage is allowed? It's within the limits of the bylaw. But they're afraid there's gonna be containers and containers outside.
Through you, Madam Chair, just to, similar to the Oak Hill example of the bylaw complaint, if there are any concerns related to uses or number of containers beyond what's permitted if approved, there's always a mechanism there for concerned residents to speak to our bylaw enforcement to open a formal complaint to investigate formally the use, and certainly zoning would be contacted to confirm, was there a previous approval for this number or this area, and then we would get involved that way. Same would apply for the tree removal damage. It sounds like that road had already gone to bylaw to investigate.
Member Smith.
Through the chair to staff. If we were to include a condition to limit the accessory buildings to say 3 on the lot, they could connect some of the shipping containers to form one structure. I'm assuming, as long as that goes through the building department and it's appropriate for a permit.
Through you, Madam Chair, that would be appropriate. Again, there's a condition added there that the appropriate building permits, the number of building permits as required, be applied for. If those shipping containers were maybe reallocated, the location on the property to not be so scattered, that's certainly the option there for the applicant, as long as we're meeting all requirements of the zoning in terms of setbacks.
Any other comments, questions? Member Smith.
Apologies, I'm going on too long here. But can I maybe go through the chair to the applicant to ask if the variance was to have a condition on the number of accessory buildings, if it would be possible to connect some of these to maybe reduce a bit of the concerns from the neighbor and maybe make it look like more of a larger structure? Just wondering your thoughts on that.
If I may, through the chair, I can somewhat address it, and so can the applicant. The 2 large shipping containers are going to be almost side by side. There's going to be a small gap to make sure there's some travel between, but they're going to be next to each other. So currently the ones at the back of the property, and as I mentioned earlier, there's cleanup happening next to the other sea container to allow it to be there. So they will be in a consolidated area. The other small shipping container is next to the garage. So it's actually on the other side of the property, not neighboring where that tree line is, and it's small. So even if you stack them together, it's still a visible structure and it takes up the same lot area. So the intention is to put the shipping containers, the 2 large ones, next to each other to limit the appearance of it being all over the lot. That's already the intention. And as you heard from the applicant, the intention is also to paint them and to make them look pretty, so to speak.
Thank you.
And does you have nothing further to add to your agent's comments?
Not really. It's just the lots. The square footage is the square footage. Doesn't matter how many containers. I'm only allowed X amount, and that's all I need. Even if I had got 4 smaller containers, my lot coverage would be the same. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm only asking for 200, just enough to accommodate 1 more container on my property. Would you like to add?
I would just like to make a commentary about the aesthetics because, and what our neighbor had mentioned. I mean, we love the property that we have, and we try and keep it as nice as we can as well. And I don't like the color of some of them, and it's as concerning for me too. And so for us, the aesthetics is just as important. We've just asked for the variance to consider the containers that we have. We're not looking to add more. I love the openness of the property. I love looking out. it's why I love living there. So we're not looking to add more and more and more containers. We're not looking to hoard. We're not looking to store, beat up cars and all that kind of stuff. That is not our intention whatsoever. So I just wanted to express that if that helps a little bit.
Thank you. And with that, I will assume all the comments and questions are complete. Excuse me, yes, you wish to add to, could you please come forward and
Thank you. I like to add it, the most important for us is not to change the zoning. We are really afraid the neighbor will change that zoning for industrial purposes.
This committee does not address zoning changes, and it is quite a lengthy process to get a zoning change. He would have to go to council, it would be a lengthy process, and you would be apprised of it. So by whether this variance is approved or denied, it has no impact on the zoning, and it was already explained that the estate residential is just a historical term. It hasn't changed essentially your property or their property, what reference in the application was as suburban residential. So that has no bearing on the matter.
We are afraid neighbor will build huge building.
But they can't at this point. And I think
in the future.
Well, in the future, as you heard on another application, there is extreme growth, and I'm not giving a speech here. Though we can't deal with that in the future. None of us have crystal balls. We can only deal with the matters at hand. And at hand right now, the issue is the lot coverage. He is not applying for a zoning change. There is no zoning change on this property, and he has only applied for a minor variance. In the future, there is nothing stopping anyone in this country, in this municipality, for applying for a zoning change. It may or may not happen. And we can't guarantee that as a committee that he won't apply, and we can't guarantee what the results of any applications will be in the future.
Okay, and we really object because we know that he will start business in those containers, whatever is already going. I know his foundry was closed and bringing so many items of industrial stuff, and it's going to be storage there. And I know he will try to kind of have operation, and it's going to be noise to our property, and we object. It's a residential area. Okay. It's not industrial. It's not storage. It's not shipping yard area.
I believe we've addressed your concerns. We've heard them. The committee will take them into their consideration when
I like to also add it that is 2 acres, but all the shipping containers, everything is on maybe 1/3 and in the back of the lot. The rest of the lot is front lot. There is no shipping containers there. All which visible from our house are in that maybe 1/3 of the lot on the back.
Okay, thank you. Then I will ask. No, I believe we've heard all the comments we need to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I will ask the committee if you are prepared to put forth a motion now, and please state if you are adding any conditions or modifying any. It was only the original conditions as drafted, only referred to meeting the tests of a minor variance.
Madam
Member
Chair,
Pinay?
can I just to the staff? Most people would build accessory building to get rid of any of the outside junk or store some stuff into the accessory building.
Yes, I understand, but the municipality has moved on to allow sea containers, so I think this will be an issue, and maybe it will have to be addressed with bylaw changes. This committee can't address that. I tend to agree there are some concerns regarding the sea containers, but at this point, we can't address them. So again, I will ask for a motion. Member Smith. And please state if you are putting any conditions on it.
I'll make a motion to approve A1423, subject to the condition that was provided. And I'd like to add 2 conditions to that as well. Condition number 2, that a maximum of 3 accessory buildings be permitted on the lot. Condition number 3, that I don't even want to call them shipping containers, that the accessory buildings mimic the aesthetic and character of the existing dwelling on the site, as the minor variance meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act.
Thank you. They sound like appropriate conditions given the concerns we've heard. We're closed for comments. Okay. I will now put the motion to a vote. Or no, I didn't get a seconder. Could I have a second, please? No one wishes to support. Member Hamilton? Thank you. I'll now. Please.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify with our planner Haley the total number of accessory structures that are proposed on the property. Can you just confirm?
There's currently 4 on the property. There's 1 shed and 3 shipping containers.
And a garage.
And a garage, yes.
5.
So 5.
3 total.
3 total? So sorry, 3 total?
I should say 3 total, including the existing garage.
Well, we're already exceeding that.
So that would mean that the 4 shipping containers would have to be consolidated into 2 because only 3 accessory buildings would be permitted on the lot.
That's possible.
Detached garage.
Open to 4. I'm just throwing 3 out there as I think it's maybe a little bit more appropriate given the size of the lot, but that's just my
Well, your motion is on the floor. We could see if it's supported or if it fails. Are you seconding?
No, not.
Oh, you're not seconding it.
Not.
Not as worded. So we have no seconder.
Correct.
So then the motion fails since we can't get a seconder. And I will ask for a new motion. No motion. And under the rules, does the application just?
Need something.
The committee, if no one is willing to make a motion to support this application, then I would ask, is anyone willing to make a motion to deny? Member Hamilton, please go ahead with your
I
motion.
will make a motion to amend the number that Member Smith put forward to include the garage and the garden shed. So in this situation, it would be a total of 5 for this application. So a 1423 LG be approved with the conditions that were put forward by Member Smith.
So you are not, just so clarification for the other members, you are not suggesting consolidation of any of the existing storage containers?
No. There'll be the 3 shipping containers, the shed,
in
and the
addition
garage.
to the garage. Okay, so there would be 5, that's your condition, so a maximum of 5 buildings. And then what about the condition for the buildings to mimic the characteristics?
Correct.
of-
No, those would keep those also. It was just a number I was changing.
Okay, so then with regards to your additional condition on the characteristics, you're in support of it
Yeah.
being painted and, okay, thank you. Then with that, we have an understanding of what our motion is now. Can I ask for a second on this motion? Member Schmidt, you will second this motion, and I will now call the vote, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Peneg.
No.
Member Smith.
No.
And Brown, no. So we are 3 and 3. We're tied. Because Member Vamus isn't here. Then the motion has failed, and all I can suggest is put forth a motion which may satisfy, in a bit of discussion. I'm supportive of the motion to consolidate some of them and limit. I'm a little uncomfortable with 5 buildings. If we failed at 3 and nearly made it at 5, would we split the difference and go to 4? And that would force consolidation of 2 containers. I think that's a solution in my mind. Member Hamilton.
Question to that. Definition of consolidation. Is that attaching the 2 together? Is that what you're...
That would be
Is
my
that-
interpretation
is that
of it.
interpretation? I'm just asking for that so I understand what you're trying to say.
Under code, isn't there a limit that it can still be attached, but there could be a gap? Like minor? I don't know if they would have to remove the walls, but it would clean up the lot in terms of they're not scattered everywhere on the lot.
Through Madam Chair, just to add to the discussion, I'm not aware, or I'm not sure of how the building division would interpret two structures just abutting each other, whether they would consider them 1 or 2 for the purpose of issuing a building permit. There is also another interpretation of how these structures would be calculated on the property if they were to be linked with a roof, one continuous roof over the 2 structures. And in terms of floor area, it doesn't necessarily change that area. I guess if there was a gap, if we were calculating the area of those 2 structures with a 2-meter gap between the 2, that may increase the accessory structure area, because that footprint is now extending beyond just the 2 structures. So we may have to ensure that we're not, or that the committee's not making a recommendation that may result in an inability to utilize the existing structures proposed, forcing them to go beyond the 205 square meters that they're asking for.
Member Smith.
May I suggest a deferral of this application for the applicant to consider the consolidation of at least 2 of the storage structures and maybe come back with a plan of how those will look aesthetically?
I was going to suggest a deferral then. And be more specific. Would you and your agent be in agreement to deferring this application?
If I may, through the chair. I think I'm having a difficulty understanding. So as I mentioned, the gap that's proposed between the 2 storage containers is minimal. It's only to allow through access rather than them touch each other. I don't think that the applicants have a concern about putting them together. if that's what the committee's looking for. I understand that that can't be in the form of a condition because we're simply looking at lot coverage. And as of right now, the way it's all placed, everything's within the required setbacks and everything like that. So I'm hopeful that I can maybe just address the concern so that the committee can maybe deliberate more on the 4 versus 5, because I would echo Dan's comments about, I don't know what the building department would do. I've never dealt with this personally in my practice, where if you attach 2 shipping containers, does it become 1 building? I wouldn't believe so. And if it's the suggestion then to add a roof, I think that would play into what the neighbors are concerned about, which is the look of it. And the applicants have made it clear that they're prepared to paint the sheds the shipping container, and one has been painted aesthetically to match the home and the garage. They're similar colors.
And I would suggest that I think the application could benefit from some further discussions with the building department, because I can see this problem coming up again and again in the future with people using shipping containers for storage. So maybe if we have some further input from building, like what has been suggested, putting them together, putting a roof on them, and the applicant comes back with more of a design that shows what they're going to do, that may address concerns.
Through the chair, if I may, I do want to remind the committee that this application is for a variance on lot coverage. It's not for, can I have a shipping container on the property? It's about lot coverage. And that lot coverage includes the garage that's already present there. That's the only reason the minor variance is really necessary. The accessory units that are existing and proposed are not what's causing the 140 per se. So it's just about lot coverage, and as staff would have mentioned later, if the shipping containers are removed and placed with the building under a building permit, as long as they're within the maximum lot coverage that the committee approves, that building can exist.
And I understand I raised the issue about the lot coverage. I'm just pointing out, since the bylaw has changed to address and include shipping containers for use, I think this may be a problem. This is the first one we've come across where shipping containers in number are growing, and we're addressing the lot coverage at the same time.
Yes, and Madam Chair, if I may address, so essentially the lot coverage could change any day at any time, and that would apply for all homeowners. So I understand the limit on the accessory building and about the aesthetics, but the proposal is not so much about the shipping containers being a temporary accessory building, but about the lot coverage. But we are happy to go to the building department and see what we can do. As mentioned, we're prepared to put the buildings together and paint them as well for aesthetic purposes.
I don't wish to interrupt, but I think the committee has indicated they would like some more specific details on this, and instead of it has been suggested to defer, someone may make a motion to refuse. So I would suggest that if most members are in support of deferring the application, that would be the best way to go at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we have a proposed motion to defer from Member Smith. Is there a seconder? Member Penag. I'll now call the. Oh yes, what was your reason? Yes, I would like that.
To defer the application to provide the applicant with an opportunity to discuss the possibility of consolidating some of the shipping containers to receive a building permit for one accessory building.
Do you still second it, Member Penag? Yes. Okay, thank you. And I will now call the vote, starting with Member Emmett.
Yes.
Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Penag. Member Smith.
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion to defer has carried. You will have to speak with planning staff to get the future date. Thank you. Welcome. I'll now move to item 7 on the agenda, noting the next meeting scheduled to be is September 21st, 2023. And again, it will be a hybrid meeting starting at 6 p.m. as there is no meeting during the month of August. May I please get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Member Emmett, second. Member Penag, please state your motion.
Moved by myself, seconded by Member Penang, that we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I now declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.